Ren stood at the crowded train station platform with a bouquet of small white daisies in his trembling hands. It was a warm spring afternoon as he focused on a single expectation, Reena's arrival. For the past 3 weeks, Ren's girlfriend, Reena, had been away. She had told him that her parents were taking her on an extended trip to the countryside to visit relatives, somewhere remote with poor cell phone reception. They wouldn't be able to talk much. At first, Ren was disappointed, but he understood. Family was important. He remembered the bright smile Reena had given him before leaving, the way she squeezed his hand and promised, "I'll be back before you know it. Wait for me, okay?" Ren had been waiting, counting down the days. He had even prepared a surprise for her. While she was away, Ren spent his time working part-time jobs and finishing a short film project he'd started months ago. He wanted to show Reena that film. It was a collection of their memories together, spliced with scenic shots of the city and a gentle piano track he composed himself. He imagined Reena's face lighting up when she saw how much effort he'd put into something for her. Yet beneath Ren's excitement lay a twinge of anxiety. The last few weeks had been strangely quiet. Reena's messages were sparse, and her replies brief. She said the reception was bad, but sometimes Ren couldn't shake the feeling something was off. Ren tried to brush away those negative thoughts. Reena loved him, and he loved her. Sure, she could be a bit distant at times. She rarely invited him to her house, and he hadn't met her parents properly yet, but he figured she was just a private person. Ren himself lived a modest life, renting a tiny room in a boarding house without any nearby family. His mother had passed away when he was small, and his father, well, that was a chapter he had closed long ago. So here he was, heart pounding with anticipation, scanning every face exiting the train. The 5 o'clock express from Kyoto rolled to a stop, and passengers began to disembark. Ren craned his neck, daisies clutched in sweaty palms, and then, there she was. He spotted Reena's familiar silhouette stepping through the train doors. Ren's face brightened. He stepped forward, raising the bouquet slightly, ready to call out her name with joy. But Reena didn't notice him. In fact, she wasn't looking around for him at all. Instead, she laughed at something and turned to her side. Ren's smile froze mid-formation as he saw another figure emerging right behind her, a young man, tall and well-dressed, carrying both his and Reena's luggage. The man said something to Reena that made her giggle, and then, to Ren's shock, the stranger leaned down to plant a quick kiss on Reena's cheek. Ren felt the world lurch under his feet as if the ground itself had tilted. The cheerful commotion of the station fell silent in Ren's ears, replaced by the deafening thud of his own heartbeat. He blinked rapidly, hoping he was seeing wrong. Was this a misunderstanding? Why was he kissing Reena? Before Ren could gather his scattered thoughts, Reena finally spotted him. Her body seemed to stiffen in surprise, her smile faltering. For a fraction of a second, Ren thought he saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but the next moment, her expression hardened into something like annoyance. She said something to the man beside her, perhaps telling him to wait, and then walked briskly towards Ren. "Reena!" Ren's voice came out small and choked. The flowers in his hand felt heavy as stones now. Who is that?" She was close enough to hear him, but Reena didn't answer. She glanced nervously over her shoulder at the man who was now politely looking away as if giving them privacy. When she turned back to Ren, her face had settled into a neutral mask that Ren hardly recognized. "Ren," she said quietly, almost in a hiss. "What are you doing here?" Ren's mind whirled. "What? I'm here to pick you up, of course." He forced a shaky smile and tried to offer the bouquet to her. "I missed you, Reena. I wanted to surprise you." She cut him off with a sharp gesture, eyeing the flowers as though they were an inconvenience. "You shouldn't have come. I was going to call you later." Ren felt a cold prickle of dread. This wasn't the warm reunion he had pictured. Why did Reena seem upset that he was here? Shouldn't she be happy to see him? Behind Reena, the tall boy was approaching, likely concerned about the conversation. Panicking at the thought of losing this chance, Ren gently took Reena's wrist, trying to pull her aside where they could speak more privately out of the flow of foot traffic. "Reena, please, what's going on? Who is that guy?" Reena yanked her wrist out of his grasp. "It's none of your business," she hissed, her eyes darting between Ren and the approaching man. Just go home, Ren. I'll explain later." But Ren's heart was in freefall. "Are you seeing him?" he whispered, pain and disbelief warring in his voice. "Reena, just tell me. I deserve to know." Reena's eyes flashed with irritation. Perhaps she realized there was no easy way out. The truth was written plainly in her silence and in the way the other man hovered protectively a few steps behind. With a frustrated sigh, Reena finally responded, her words like icy needles. "Fine. Yes, Ren. I am. With him. His name is Sho. We spent time together during the break. Spent time together." The vague phrasing did nothing to soften the blow. His hands went limp, the bouquet slipping from his fingers and landing on the station floor. Reena glanced at the fallen flowers and back at Ren. Her face was a mixture of impatience and discomfort. "I'm sorry," she said, without a shred of warmth in her voice. "It just happened, okay? I didn't plan it." Behind her, the man, Sho, stepped forward and placed a hand gently on Reena's shoulder. Ren noticed Sho eyeing him, not with anger, but with a sort of pity or awkwardness, as if Ren were a stranger intruding on a private moment. It made Ren's blood burn with humiliation. "Is everything okay, Reena?" Sho asked, his tone concerned. Reena nodded quickly. "Yes, let's just go," she mumbled. turning away from Ren as though he were nothing more than a bothersome acquaintance. Ren reached out, desperation taking hold. "Reena, wait," he pleaded, voice cracking. Sho moved slightly, positioning himself between Reena and Ren, not aggressively, but firmly. "I think it's better if you don't cause a scene," Sho said to Ren quietly, raising his free hand in a pacifying gesture. Cause a scene? Ren looked around and realized a few people were beginning to watch. Commuters slowed in their steps, curious glances thrown at what must appear to be a lover's quarrel. His cheeks burned with shame. He hadn't meant to cause a spectacle. He just wanted to understand why the girl he loved was leaving with someone else. Reena tugged Sho's arm. "Let's go," she repeated, her voice low but urgent. Without another word, or even a farewell glance at Ren, she hurried away with Sho by her side. Ren stood rooted to the spot, his arms still outstretched in a futile plea. He felt numb. Everything around him seemed to blur. All that remained clear was the sight of Reena's retreating figure, entwined with another, walking away from him. That night, Ren couldn't sleep. He lay on his thin futon in his cramped one-room apartment, eyes wide open, replaying the scene at the station over and over in his mind. He checked his phone for the 100th time, opening the chat with Reena. The last messages were from a few days ago, him asking if her trip was going well, and her replying briefly that she was busy and would talk later. How cold those messages seemed now. Ren typed out several drafts. "Reena, I'm so confused. Can we talk? Why? Was it something I did? I miss you." He deleted each one. He didn't want to sound desperate, though that's exactly how he felt. Desperate for answers, for some reassurance that their love had been real. As dawn's light crept through the thin curtains, Ren finally drifted into a restless sleep, tears drying on his cheeks. The next day, a Saturday, Ren couldn't stay still. His thoughts were a storm he couldn't calm. He needed to talk to Reena properly, to hear from her own lips why she did this. Ren decided he had to seek her out. He remembered that Reena often spent her Saturdays at the library of her university campus to catch up on studies. Even though they attended different colleges in Tokyo, the train ride between them wasn't too long. In the past, he had occasionally met her after her library time to grab dinner. Today, he would go there and wait if he had to. With a resolve fueled by heartache, Ren left his apartment. He arrived at Reena's university by late afternoon. Students strolled in and out of the campus gates, laughing with friends or hurrying to club activities. Ren felt out of place among them, his mind solely focused on finding one person. He made his way to the familiar library courtyard. There, under a large ginkgo tree, was a stone bench, Reena's favorite spot to sit and read. Sure enough, he saw her there. For a moment, he felt relief flood him. She was alone, reading a book, looking as calm and lovely as ever. It was almost like old times, and he could pretend nothing had changed. But as he approached, each step felt heavier. Ren's heart thundered in his chest. He stopped a few paces away, gathering his courage. "Reena," he called softly. Reena looked up from her book, and her expression immediately tensed. She obviously hadn't expected to see him. "Ren," she said flatly, marking her place in the book with a finger. "Why are you here?" Ren swallowed, his throat dry. The last time they'd seen each other, it had ended in disaster. But here, away from prying eyes, maybe they could talk honestly. "We need to talk," he managed to say, voice strained. "Please, I need to understand what happened." Reena exhaled slowly, closing her book. "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, her tone guarded. Ren stepped closer, but he kept a respectful distance. He didn't want to scare her or seem aggressive. "Nothing to talk about?" he repeated, hurt creeping into his voice. "Reena, you were my girlfriend for a year, and then I find out, just like that you're with someone else? Why? I think I deserve at least an explanation. Was it something I did? Did I hurt you or neglect you somehow?" Reena stood from the bench, slinging her handbag over her shoulder. She seemed uncomfortable, glancing around to ensure no one was overhearing. "Keep your voice down," she muttered. "I don't want to make a scene here." Ren felt frustration bubbling up. "A scene? Reena, I'm not trying to make a scene. I'm just trying to talk to you. Please, just be honest with me. Did you ever care about me at all?" For a second, something like guilt flashed in Reena's eyes again, the same as at the station, but it quickly vanished, replaced by a frosty hardness. "Ren, it's over between us. I'm sorry if that hurts you, but that's the truth. I didn't plan to tell you in such a blunt way, but you forced my hand by showing up yesterday." Ren felt like she'd slapped him, though her hands remained clutching her book. "Forced your hand? Reena, I was just there to welcome you back. How was I supposed to know you had someone else?" His voice cracked at the last words. Reena looked away, a slight grimace on her face. "Look, we had a nice time together, but things change. People change. I'm with Sho now. His family is close to mine. We met during the vacation, and we clicked. He can provide things that you can't." Ren's stomach churned. "Provide things?" She rolled her eyes, as if it should be obvious. "Ren, don't make me spell it out. You live in a tiny one-room apartment. You're always working odd jobs. You could barely afford to take me out to decent places." Her words were quiet, but each one was like a dagger. "It's not all about money, but it's a part of it. With Sho, I don't have to worry about any of that. We stayed at a seaside resort, ate at fine restaurants. He comes from a good family. My parents like him. They never really approved of me dating you, you know." Ren's hands clenched at his sides. He felt a rush of anger and humiliation. "You never even gave me a chance," he whispered. "You knew my situation. I'm sorry I'm not rich, Reena. I would have done anything to make you happy. I worked so hard. I was even working on that film and took those jobs partly so I could save up for us." His voice rose despite himself, and a couple of passing students glanced over. Reena tensed and stepped back. "Don't cause a scene," she warned under her breath. "I get that you're upset, but this is exactly the kind of drama I wanted to avoid." Ren took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His vision blurred with tears he refused to shed in front of her. "Avoiding drama? By cheating on me and not even telling me?" he said bitterly, but quiet enough that only she could hear. "Did I mean that little to you? That you could just throw me away the moment someone better came along?" Reena flinched at the accusation and crossed her arms defensively. "Believe it or not, I did care about you, but we started dating so young. We were just high school kids then, and college is different. People grow apart." She sighed. "Maybe I handled it badly. For that, I'm sorry. But you have to move on, Ren. What did you expect? That we'd get married and live happily ever after with nothing? Love doesn't pay the bills." The cold pragmatism of her words stunned Ren. He had never imagined that the girl he'd cherished had been thinking like this all along. Reena glanced at her watch, a slim silver piece Ren had never seen before, perhaps a gift from Sho. "I have to go," she said. "Sho is picking me up soon." Panic seized Ren. She was slipping away again. He moved to stand in her path. "Just one more thing," he said hurriedly, his voice trembling. "Was it all a lie? All those times we laughed together, studied together, dreamed about the future. Was any of it real to you?" Finally, he saw a crack in her icy facade. Reena bit her lip, and for an instant, her eyes softened. "It wasn't a lie at the time," she admitted softly. "I did enjoy those moments, but I was also starting to feel like maybe we didn't have a future. My parents always said you weren't right for me. I guess I started to see their point." Reena stepped around him gently. "I'm sorry, Ren," she said again, though her tone remained cool and distant. "I hope you find someone who suits you better." Before he could respond, she walked away briskly. Ren stood there, frozen in place, as Reena's figure grew smaller and smaller. When she was halfway across the courtyard, he saw Sho approach, his expensive car parked nearby. Reena flashed Sho a smile, that radiant smile Ren used to think was reserved for him, and she got into the passenger seat. Ren realized he was shaking. He had gotten his answers, but they only made the pain sharper. How cruelly simple her reasoning was. He wasn't good enough for her lifestyle or her parents' standards. All his love and effort could be discarded in an instant compared to wealth and comfort. He stumbled back to the stone bench and sank down. Students continued their lives around him, unaware of the personal tragedy that had just unfolded in their midst. A group of friends nearby joked and laughed together, and the sound made Ren's heart ache. He thought of how Reena had slowly stopped inviting him to hang out with her university friends, how she often said she was busy when he wanted to visit her campus. All the little signs he'd ignored came crashing down on him now. She had been pulling away for a long time, and he was too blind in love to see it. Ren sat there until dusk, wallowing in sorrow. Eventually, a security guard began locking up areas of the campus and politely told him to leave. With nowhere else to go, Ren found himself wandering through the city in a haze. He passed by a gourmet restaurant where couples inside clinked wine glasses. He passed an arcade where excited teens shouted over a rhythm game. He passed a park where he and Reena used to stroll on dates under the lantern light. Every corner of the city seemed to hold a memory of her, of them, now tainted and painful. By the time Ren returned to his apartment, it was late and he was beyond exhausted. He dropped onto his futon, drained of tears, and feeling emptier than ever. On the tiny table lay the external hard drive containing the short film he had made for Reena. With a bitter taste in his mouth, Ren picked it up and almost threw it against the wall in anger, but he stopped. Instead, he put it away in a drawer, out of sight. Days passed. Ren skipped classes. He couldn't concentrate on lectures or assignments. He ignored everything except his part-time jobs, which he still dragged himself to, only because failing to show up would mean not being able to pay rent. He delivered newspapers at dawn like a sleepwalker. In the evenings, he washed dishes at a local diner, scrubbing plates until his fingers were raw, all on autopilot. The motions kept him from thinking too much. But every night, alone in the silence, the grief hit him all over again. The worst part was how isolated he felt. He had a few casual friends at his university, but in his depression and embarrassment, he withdrew from them. He was too proud and hurt to admit he'd been dumped, so he pretended everything was fine until he could rush home to solitude. One evening, about a week after the breakup, Ren returned from work to find his elderly landlord, Mr. Shimmy, waiting in the hallway. Normally, the old man would scold Ren about the rent being a few days late, or lecture him on keeping the noise down. Not that Ren ever made much noise. But today, the landlord's face was strangely soft with concern. "Ren," Mr. Shimmy said gruffly, "you have a phone call. I knocked, but you weren't home. They left a message." He handed Ren a slip of paper with a number scrawled on it. Ren didn't recognize it. Who was it? Ren asked, frowning. Some office. They said it was urgent. Are you in any kind of trouble, boy? Mr. Shimmy's bushy eyebrows knitted together. Ren shook his head, baffled. No, not that I know of. Thanks. I'll call them back. He retreated into his apartment. The space felt especially small and lonely tonight. Ren absent-mindedly thought that even Shimmy's concern was unusual. Perhaps he'd looked so miserable that the normally cranky landlord felt sorry for him. He dialed the number, half expecting it to be a mistake or some telemarketer. It was past business hours, but someone picked up immediately. Hello, this is the law office of Ken & Partners. A brisk female voice answered. Law office? Ren's heart skipped. I'm returning a call. My landlord said someone from this number tried to reach me. My name is Ren Takaro. There was a pause. Then the woman's tone changed subtly, as if she recognized the name. Ah, Ren-sama. Yes, please hold. I'll get Mr. Ken for you right away. Ren-sama? Ren was taken aback by the honorific. And what would a lawyer want with him? A deep male voice came on the line. Ren Takaro? Yes, speaking, Ren said, nerves creeping in. My name is Ken. I'm terribly sorry to inform you about your father. Kazuki Takaro passed away 2 days ago. Ren's breath caught in his throat. He almost dropped the phone. For a moment, he wasn't sure he'd heard right. His father? Passed away? The words sounded distant, like they were meant for someone else. Sir? Prompted the lawyer gently when Ren didn't respond. I'm here, Ren managed. He pressed his free hand against his temple. A dull throb started there. What happened? Mr. Takaro had a sudden cardiac arrest. It was quite unexpected. The news has just broken today in the media, but we've been trying to reach you as soon as possible given the circumstances. You are listed as his sole heir. Ren sank onto his futon, knees suddenly weak. News? Media? Of course. His father wasn't just anyone. Kazuki Takaro was a household name in Japan, known as a business magnate, the head of Takaro Industries, and one of the richest men in the country, a public figure. Ren hadn't seen or spoken to him in years, but he occasionally saw his father's face on business magazines or heard snippets about him in passing. It had always felt like hearing about a stranger. Now that stranger was dead. I know this must be a lot to take in, Mr. Ken continued carefully. I extend my deepest condolences for your loss. We would like to meet with you regarding Mr. Takaro's will and the inheritance matters. Could you come to our office tomorrow morning? Ren's mind swirled. He struggled to find something to say. Condolences? Loss? What was he supposed to feel? He had lost his father long before today, in all the ways that mattered. An inheritance. The idea of discussing money right now felt hollow and wrong when he could barely process that his father was truly gone from this world. I'll try, he said faintly. Tomorrow morning. After he hung up, Ren sat in the darkness for a long time. The room was silent, except for the muffled sounds of distant traffic through the thin walls. His phone buzzed suddenly, an email notification. Ren opened it absent-mindedly. It was from a news site he had subscribed to for general updates. Billionaire Kazuki Takaro passes away at 58. Sole heir, estranged son Ren, to inherit Takaro Empire. Ren stared at the headline, his eyes wide. They already had his name in the news. A cold sweat broke out on his skin. How had they found him so quickly? Perhaps the lawyers had released the information, or maybe journalists had known about the estrangement and dug up his details. In any case, his anonymity was shattered in an instant. Within a day, his phone began buzzing with calls and messages. Unknown numbers, old classmates, even distant relatives he hadn't heard from in years, all reaching out, either to express shock or, disturbingly, to congratulate him. Congratulate him for what? Becoming an orphan with a large bank account? Ren turned off the phone, overwhelmed. He pressed his face into his hands. In just 1 week's time, his entire world had been upended twice, first losing the girl he loved, and now the death of a father he had tried to forget. He felt completely adrift, caught in a tempest of emotions that didn't make sense together. Grief for a father he had bitter, complicated feelings towards. Anger and hurt from Reena's betrayal, fear and confusion about the sudden wealth and attention thrust upon him. Ren shut off his phone entirely. He crawled onto his futon, curling up on his side. He wished desperately that when he opened his eyes, he would be back to a time when life was simple, when he was just a regular student with a loving girlfriend and a part-time job. But morning arrived, indifferent to Ren's silent plea. He forced himself up with the sunrise, exhausted and numb. Remembering his promise to meet the lawyer, Ren dressed in the clothes he had. He certainly didn't own a suit appropriate for meeting high-powered attorneys of the rich. Stepping outside, Ren immediately noticed changes. A newspaper left at his door bore the headline about his father. Thankfully, there were no reporters at the boarding house yet, but he felt paranoid eyes on him as he walked to the train station. Perhaps it was just his imagination, or maybe people really did recognize him from a photo circulating online. He kept his head down. At the entrance of the law firm's building, he wasn't so lucky. A small gaggle of press members had gathered outside, cameras and microphones at the ready. They must have guessed he would be coming for the will reading. The moment they spotted him, they swarmed. There he is, Ren Takaro-san. Ren-san, how does it feel to become one of the richest young men in Japan overnight? Is it true you were estranged from your father? Why did you leave home? Questions flew at him from all directions. Ren froze like a deer in headlights, the flashing camera lights disorienting him. He wasn't used to any of this. Public attention, intrusive questions, the word richest associated with him. It didn't feel real. He bowed his head and managed to stammer, I have no comments. Please, I just want to live a normal life. This was too much. He didn't want to be rude, but he needed to escape. With that, Ren pushed through the throng, keeping his eyes averted from the cameras. Security guards at the building's entrance stepped in to hold the journalists back as Ren fled into the lobby. An assistant from the law firm greeted him and guided him upstairs to a conference room. There, Mr. Ken, an older man with salt and pepper hair and kind, astute eyes, welcomed Ren with a firm handshake. Thank you for coming, Ren. Ren nodded mutely and sat down at the long table. He noticed a large manila envelope laid out in front of the lawyer, as well as a few official-looking documents. We will keep this as straightforward as possible, Mr. Ken said gently. I know this is a difficult time. First, let me say again my condolences. I was your father's attorney for 15 years. He spoke of you often. Ren's eyes widened in surprise. He did? He couldn't help but ask. It was hard to imagine his father talking about him at all, considering they hadn't spoken since Ren was 17. Mr. Ken offered a small smile. Yes, he always kept tabs on how you were doing, through one means or another. I believe he truly cared for you, in his own way. Ren remained silent, not trusting himself to respond. As you may already know from the media, you are the sole heir, Mr. Ken continued, opening a folder. Your father's estate, assets, and the 51% controlling shares of Takaro Industries all pass to you. There are also properties, investments, etc., which our firm can help you catalog. There is no dispute, as you are the only direct family. Your father prepared a will shortly after your 18th birthday, and it's been updated regularly for any changes in assets but never in beneficiaries. It has always been you. Ren listened, still in a state of disbelief. The numbers being mentioned, the scope of assets. It was staggering. Bank accounts that held amounts he could hardly fathom. He thought of his tiny apartment and the constant worry of making rent. It felt ironic and unfair. He could buy the entire building he lived in 100 times over and not dent his resources. Yet just last week, his landlord was yelling at him for being late with payment. Is there anything specific my father left? Like a message or? Ren asked hesitantly. Part of him hoped, irrationally, that perhaps his father had left a letter explaining things, apologizing maybe, or offering words of fatherly advice he never gave in life. Mr. Ken's expression softened. There is, actually. He slid the manila envelope towards Ren. Your father wrote a personal letter to you. He instructed me to give it to you along with the will. I haven't read it. It's your private correspondence. Ren's fingers trembled as he took the envelope. It felt heavy despite its slimness. He debated opening it right there, but suddenly felt afraid of the emotions it might stir. Thank you, he said quietly, deciding to read it when he was alone and ready. The lawyer nodded in understanding and continued. Now, about the business. The board of Takaro Industries will convene next week. They'll want to know your intentions. If you wish, you can assume the chairmanship as your father's successor. If not, they will likely appoint an interim chair or manage collectively until you decide. There is also the matter of your father's philanthropic foundations, ongoing projects, and, he coughed lightly, personal arrangements. Personal arrangements? Ren repeated, not sure what that meant. Mr. Ken tapped a smaller document. Your father had long-standing connections with the Watanabe family. I believe their daughter Mayu was a childhood friend of yours? Ren's eyes widened at the name from long ago. Mayu Watanabe. He vaguely recalled a cheerful little girl with pigtails laughing as they played tag in a vast garden. They used to meet occasionally at formal gatherings or when their parents arranged playdates. Yes, I remember Mayu, Ren said. What about her? Well, the lawyer continued delicately, it seems your father and her parents had hopes that the two of you might reconnect, perhaps even consider marriage in the future. There was an informal agreement, though nothing legally binding, of course. I understand. If this is quite unexpected, Ren felt his face flush. Marriage? Out of nowhere? He fidgeted in his seat. I haven't even seen her in years, and I'm certainly not in any position to think about marriage. His voice wavered as Reena's face flickered in his mind, the wound still raw. Of course, Mr. Ken said reassuringly. There's no pressure. I only mention it because the Watanabe family reached out. They expressed their support and said Mayu would be happy to see you again whenever you're ready. Your father cared a great deal for her as well. He thought of her like a daughter he never had. But this is entirely up to you. I can provide you their contact details if and when you want them. Ren swallowed, trying to process yet another unexpected turn. He had gone from being nearly alone in the world to having not only a fortune thrust on him, but even a would-be fiancé waiting in the wings. It was absurd. It felt like someone else's life, not his. I appreciate you telling me, Ren replied, trying to be polite despite his inner turmoil. But at this moment, I don't think I can deal with that. Please extend my thanks to the Watanabes and Mayu, but I need some time. Certainly, Mr. Ken said. Take all the time you need. Our firm will handle the immediate matters of the estate. We'll transfer liquid assets into accounts for you. I don't need them right now, Ren interjected, surprising the lawyer. You can transfer whatever, but I don't plan on using any of it. The lawyer paused, then nodded slowly. Very well. It is your money, and you can choose to do with it as you wish. Many heirs in your position might hire financial advisors or managers, but if you aren't making any changes, things can remain in stasis for a while. Mr. Ken gave a kind smile. Life may not be completely normal given these circumstances, but I see your point. If you need any advice or help managing affairs, you have my card. And again, I'm sorry for everything you've been through this week. Please take care of yourself, Ren. Ren stood and bowed respectfully. Thank you, Ken-san. I will. And thank you for the letter. He patted the envelope containing his father's final words. Walking out of the law office an hour later, Ren braced himself for the media gauntlet again. They were still outside, waiting eagerly. This time, security escorted him to a taxi around the corner while holding off the crowd. As the taxi pulled away, Ren let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror with a curious expression, no doubt recognizing the young man's face from the news. Ren felt self-conscious, but at least the driver didn't prod him with questions. Arriving at his usual stop, as he approached the entrance of his apartment building, the door swung open. Mr. Shimmy, the landlord, was standing there, as if he had been waiting. The old man gave an exaggerated bow, nearly a full 90 degrees, and smiled widely, a stark contrast to his usual grouchy demeanor. "Welcome back, Ren-sama," he said, voice ingratiating. "How was your outing? I trust everything went well?" Ren paused, momentarily taken aback. "Ren-sama?" The honorific felt uncomfortable. This was the same landlord who last month had threatened to throw Ren's belongings out if he didn't pay rent promptly. I'm fine, thank you," Ren replied cautiously. Mr. Shimmy scurried forward. "Here, let me get the door for you. Oh, and if you need anything at all, please just let me know. I value you as a tenant, of course. In fact, I was thinking of upgrading the lock on your unit. No extra charge. Security is important, yes? Maybe a fresh coat of paint for the room too? I want to ensure you're comfortable." The old man's eyes darted to the envelope in Ren's hand and the formal documents tucked under his arm, as if confirming for himself that Ren truly was the heir depicted on TV. Ren felt a flush of discomfort. "That's very kind, but unnecessary," he muttered, stepping past the landlord to the stairs. "My room is fine as it is." Mr. Shimmy followed a couple of steps. "Ah, but perhaps it's too small. If you'd prefer a larger unit, I have one open on the second floor with a nice view. Normally a bit more expensive, but for you, of course, free of charge for the first few months, and we can discuss a very generous rate after." "Thank you, but no," Ren cut in, trying not to let his irritation show. "I'm all right. I just want to rest now if you don't mind." Of course. The landlord bowed again. Shaking his head, Ren climbed the narrow stairs to his apartment. His world had indeed changed overnight, whether he liked it or not. People's gazes felt different now. The apartment was silent. He sat at his low table and carefully opened the manila envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a handwritten letter spanning several pages, recognizing his father's bold, elegant penmanship. Ren's eyes fell on the first line, "My dear son," and his vision blurred. With a ragged breath, he set the letter down gently. Not yet. He wasn't ready yet. For now, Ren curled up on his futon, physically and emotionally exhausted. One thing he knew, he wasn't going to abandon the life he'd built for himself. Money be damned. He was going to continue going to classes, doing his jobs, living in this tiny apartment. It was partly stubbornness, partly a need to prove that he wasn't beholden to his father, even in death. Ren did his best to maintain a low profile over the next few days. He returned to classes, slipping into lecture halls early and leaving right when the bell rang to avoid curious classmates. Whispers followed him anyway. News had spread among the students about his windfall. Some acquaintances he barely knew approached with exaggerated friendliness, while others kept their distance, unsure how to act around the rich kid who used to be one of them. It was disconcerting, but Ren tried to focus on his studies and routine as a distraction from the emotional whirlwind. At his part-time job at the diner, the manager, who used to berate him for every minor mistake, now treated him with kid gloves. Ren, you can take a break if you're tired," the manager said one evening as Ren scrubbed tables. "In fact, are you sure you want to keep working? Not that I'm firing you, but given your circumstances." Ren forced a polite smile. "I appreciate the concern, sir, but I want to keep busy. It helps me clear my head." Late one afternoon, after finishing a shift at the diner, Ren headed home. He climbed the stairs of his apartment building. To his surprise, a figure stood by his door. It was a young woman, elegantly dressed. She had a small rolling suitcase at her side and a tote bag slung over one shoulder. For a split second, Ren's heart irrationally thought Reena, but no. This woman's stance and aura were different, poised and refined. As he approached, keys in hand, the woman turned to face him. Her eyes, a warm hazel, lit up with recognition. She broke into a bright smile. "Ren?" she asked gently. Ren blinked, taken off guard that this stranger knew his name. Up close, she seemed around his age. There was something vaguely familiar about her features. An old memory tugged at his mind. "I'm Ren Takaro, and you are?" The young woman's smile softened a bit, seeing that he didn't immediately know her. "It's me, Mayu." Ren's eyes widened as the memory clicked. Mayu, the childhood friend he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. In his mind, he still pictured a little girl with pigtails and grass stains on her knees. But now she stood before him as a beautiful, graceful, college-aged woman. "Mayu," he repeated in astonishment. I remember, we used to catch beetles in my father's garden, right?" Mayu giggled, a melodious sound that eased the tension. "Yes. You called every beetle George for some reason. You had such a serious face telling me that was their official name." Ren felt his cheeks warm at the silly recollection. "I can't believe you remember that." "I remember a lot of things," Mayu said, her voice turning gentle. "I've been looking forward to seeing you again for a long time, Ren." Reality rushed back. If Mayu was here, at his door with a suitcase, it likely had to do with the arrangement the lawyer mentioned. Ren's stomach fluttered with nerves. He quickly unlocked his door. Would you like to come in? Sorry, it's not much." He trailed off, suddenly self-conscious. His apartment was tidy but extremely small and plain. He hadn't expected to be entertaining guests, let alone someone like Mayu, who no doubt grew up in a spacious mansion. Mayu stepped inside politely and removed her shoes. She looked around with keen interest. To Ren's surprise, she didn't show a hint of disdain or discomfort. Instead, she smiled. "It's cozy, and it feels very you." Ren wasn't sure what that meant, but he was relieved she wasn't put off by the humble space. He offered her the only chair by the small table, and he sat on the edge of the futon. There was a brief silence. Now that the initial shock had worn off, Ren realized this situation was highly unusual. A young woman, technically a stranger now, just arriving at his home unannounced. Yet Mayu radiated a calm sincerity that put him a little at ease. "So, Mayu," he began, fiddling with his hands. "Ken-san, the lawyer, mentioned that our parents had plans. But I honestly didn't expect you to come find me." Mayu nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "I'm sorry for dropping in so suddenly. I hope it's not rude. After I heard about Uncle, your father, and saw your press statement, I felt I had to see you. I asked my parents and they agreed I could come. Actually," she lowered her eyes for a moment, "they were eager for me to meet you too, given everything." Ren flushed slightly. "I see. I'm sorry if all this put you in a strange position." She quickly shook her head. "Not at all. I was worried about you. It must have been a difficult week." Her voice was full of genuine concern. "Losing your father and suddenly being thrown into the spotlight. And if I recall, you were living on your own before this, right? That must have been tough even before all the news." Ren managed a small, weary smile. "You could say that." He debated internally for a second, then added, "Actually, it's been rough even aside from all that. I recently went through a breakup." The words tasted bitter, but oddly, it felt somewhat easier telling someone outside of his usual circle. Perhaps because Mayu had no prior context, and he didn't have to worry about gossip or judgment from her. Mayu's face fell into a sympathetic frown. "Oh, Ren, I'm so sorry." She leaned forward slightly. "What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" Ren swallowed. "My girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend, she left me for someone else, quite suddenly. We were together for a long time. I thought I knew her, but..." He shrugged, trying to play off the heartache that still squeezed at him. "It's over. She made her choice." Mayu's eyes flashed with empathy and a touch of indignation on his behalf. "That's awful. You didn't deserve that." Ren gave a hollow laugh. "Thanks, but maybe she thought I deserved it. I wasn't exactly adequate for her, I guess." He gestured around the apartment. "She wanted more than I could give. More money, more status. I don't know." Understanding dawned on Mayu's face. She had likely seen this scenario in their social circles, people driven by wealth and status. "Then she was a fool," Mayu said softly. "None of those things are what makes someone a good partner or a good person." Ren looked at her, surprised by the firmness in her tone. Mayu blushed lightly at her own bold statement and continued, "I mean, I've known you only as a child, but I remember you were kind and fun and genuine. Those qualities are far more precious, if you ask me." Her earnest praise made Ren's chest ache, not in a painful way, but rather like a balm applied to a wound. He hadn't realized how much he needed someone to say something like that to him. "Thank you, Mayu," he murmured, sincerity in every syllable. "I really appreciate hearing that." She smiled brightly, and for a moment Ren saw that same little girl who used to cheer him up when he was down. They talked for a while, reminiscing about small memories from childhood. Each recollection brought tiny smiles to Ren's face, as if rediscovering a part of himself he had buried. As the sky outside turned dark blue with early evening, Ren realized he hadn't offered Mayu anything. He hastily stood. "I'm a terrible host. Can I get you some tea or water? Have you eaten dinner?" Mayu stood as well. "Oh, I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble. I have tea at least," he said, moving to the kitchenette. While he boiled water, Mayu wandered the room, looking at the few personal items he had on a shelf. A couple of books, a framed photo of Ren with his mother when he was a toddler, and a small trophy from a short film contest he had won in high school. "You still make films?" Mayu asked, picking up the trophy carefully. It was a cheap plastic thing, but the engraved plate read, "Best Student Film, Tokyo Young Filmmakers Festival." Ren glanced over, a bit embarrassed. Not really. That was a long time ago. Lately I've only filmed something small, but it doesn't matter now." He thought of the hard drive with the unfinished short film for Reena, still sitting in his drawer. Mayu set the trophy down gently. I remember you running around with a camcorder at my parents' garden party, bossing the other kids to act in your mystery movie. She giggled. You were very serious about it. He chuckled, recalling the cringeworthy memory of little him shouting action while kids in fancy clothes pretended to be detectives and thieves among the rose bushes. I'm surprised you remember that too. Honestly, I haven't had much time for those hobbies. Been busy trying to survive. Mayu's expression grew soft. Ren, I'm sorry you had to struggle. I wish we hadn't lost touch. Maybe I could have been there for you somehow. Ren poured 2 cups of green tea and brought them to the table. As they sipped tea, Mayu finally broached the delicate topic that hung in the air. Ren, I know you must think I'm here only because of what our parents wanted. And it's true that my parents always hoped maybe we'd end up together, as did your father. But, she looked up earnestly, that's not the only reason I'm here now. Ren met her gaze. Because I wanted to be, she said simply. I heard about everything and I just couldn't stay away. I needed to see with my own eyes that you were all right. You're practically family to me, even if we haven't spoken in years. Family. The word touched Ren somewhere deep. Mayu continued, her cheeks tinting pink as she spoke more frankly. And yes, the arrangement is there. Our parents intended it. But I won't lie, I was happy when I heard. I've thought about you over the years, wondered how you were. The idea of reconnecting was something I secretly wanted, not because of business or duty, but because I liked you, Ren, even back then. She laughed softly, hiding her embarrassment by taking a sip of tea. Ren felt heat rise to his face. I know, she said, smiling. Childhood crushes are funny, aren't they? But I mention it just to say, I have always cared about you. So this reunion, for me, it isn't coming out of nowhere. Ren was at a loss for words. It had never occurred to him that someone from that far back might hold genuine affection for him after so long. I don't know what to say, he murmured honestly. I'm flattered, and also sorry, because I'm a bit of a mess right now. Mayu put her cup down and shook her head. You don't need to say anything about that. I understand you're hurting. I didn't come expecting you to, well, sweep me off my feet or something. She smiled kindly. How about this? Let's just start as friends, like we used to be. We have a lot to catch up on, and if it's okay with you, I'd like to stay nearby to support you for a little while. Ren glanced at her suitcase. You mean, stay here? In this rent place? Yes, Mayu confirmed. Originally, my parents suggested I invite you to stay at our house or get you a fancy condo, but I knew you wouldn't like that. I heard your press statement, and I know you're trying to live normally. She looked around the small room. I'm fine with this place, if you'll have me, or if it's too awkward. I can rent a unit in the building, perhaps that spare one the landlord mentioned, but I'd prefer not to be far. I just feel you shouldn't be alone right now. Ren's mind spun. He pictured the gossip if people learned a girl moved in with him, but then again, the only people who might judge him were those who already whispered behind his back about his newfound wealth. His personal life had become an open secret anyway, and he had to admit, after countless nights of crushing loneliness, the thought of having someone around, someone who genuinely cared, was immensely appealing. Yet, he didn't want her to make such a sacrifice of comfort. Mayu, you're used to a big house and all. I can't let you squeeze into this one room. The bed is a futon on the floor. There's not even space. Mayu waved her hand dismissively. I don't need much space. I can sleep on a futon too. I already asked my family's driver to bring another set over if needed. He's waiting outside, by the way, just in case you said yes or if I needed a ride to a hotel. She blushed again. I was optimistic you wouldn't kick me out. Ren was slightly flabbergasted by how far she'd planned this. She really was determined. He ran a hand through his hair, a habit when he was nervous. You're serious? As serious as when you insisted every beetle was named George, she replied with a playful grin. That made Ren laugh. It was a small laugh, but real. He realized it was the first genuine laugh that had escaped him since his world fell apart. In that moment, he felt something loosen in his chest, a tight knot of sorrow and loneliness easing just a little. Finally, he nodded. Okay, if your parents are fine with it, and if you truly don't mind, you can stay here. Mayu beamed, relief and happiness evident on her face. She stood and gave a slight bow, half teasing, half sincere. Thank you for having me, Ren. I promise I'll do my best not to intrude. Think of me as your roommate. Ren stood as well and, feeling a surge of gratitude, bowed in return. Thank you, Mayu. Really, I don't know how I could repay your kindness. You don't have to, she said softly. What are friends for? Thus, on that cool evening, Mayu moved her suitcase inside Ren's little apartment. The landlord was more than happy to bring in an extra futon, with much wink-wink and stammering about young love, which mortified Ren, but Mayu handled with polite nods. By nightfall, the one-room space had been rearranged modestly to accommodate 2 sleeping areas. As Ren laid out sheets, he felt a strange mix of emotions. It was as if life had granted him a gentle reprieve, a chance to heal with someone by his side. For the first time in weeks, Ren went to sleep, not with tears or emptiness. In a trendy cafe across town, Reena scrolled through her phone with a bored expression. Opposite her sat Sho, the new boyfriend she had so proudly paraded days ago. He was talking enthusiastically about an upcoming music festival, but Reena only half listened, her mind elsewhere. Truth be told, since returning from their secret vacation, Reena felt uneasy. The way things had ended with Ren at the station and later on campus, his devastated face haunted the back of her mind more than she expected. She brushed it off as guilt that would fade, reassuring herself she did what was best for her future. Ren will get over it, she'd told herself. He'll find someone in his league. But this afternoon, something felt off. Sho had been glancing at his own phone repeatedly, and other patrons in the cafe were gossiping in hushed tones, some excitedly looking her way. Reena caught snippets of conversation. That guy on TV? The heir, what was his name? Ren Takaro. Did you see the figure? Over $1 billion. So young and quite good looking in that photo. At the mention of Ren's name, Reena's chest tightened. Heir? $1 billion? Surely she misheard. It's probably some different Ren. Curiosity and a strange dread compelled her to unlock her phone and search the news. It didn't take long for the headlines to flash on the screen. Billionaire's only son inherits fortune. Ren Takaro, 20, to become the youngest billionaire in Japan. Reena felt the blood drain from her face. She hurriedly clicked the article, eyes racing over the details. Ren's estranged father was Kazuki Takaro. Reena knew that name. Anyone who read business or celebrity news did. The CEO of Takaro Industries, a titan of finance. She had heard he had a son who left home, but never in her wildest dreams connected her Ren to that family. Ren had never spoken of his father in detail, and Reena assumed he was just from a simple broken home like many. Her hands trembled as she read about the massive inheritance, the media frenzy, and Ren's brief comment about living a normal life. There was even a photo attached of Ren ducking through reporters, looking uncomfortable and troubled. Reena? Hey Reena, Sho's voice cut into her shocked silence. Are you okay? You look pale. Reena slowly lowered her phone, heart pounding. Ren Takaro, she muttered. Sho gave a half smile. Oh yeah, that news is crazy, right? I was just reading about it. You went to high school with that guy, didn't you? I remember you mentioned a Ren before. Reena's eyes snapped to Sho. I didn't just go to high school with him, Sho, she said, voice rising. A couple at the next table glanced over curiously. He is my ex-boyfriend. Sho blinked in surprise, then frowned. Ex? You mean the guy you were dating before me? That was him? The heir guy? Reena nodded stiffly, her mind racing. How could this be happening? Ren, wealthy. It was as if the universe was playing a cruel joke on her. Sho leaned back, trying to process. Wow, and here I thought he was some nobody. You always avoided talking about him. There was a hint of discomfort in his tone, perhaps at the realization that Reena had left someone who turned out to be very rich for him. Reena's emotions swung wildly from disbelief to envy to blinding regret. She had thrown away Ren like an old toy, thinking he had nothing to offer her future. And now, he held more wealth than she could imagine. The lifestyle she craved, the security, the status. It was all within his grasp. Her grip tightened on her phone. Images from the past year flooded her mind. The times Ren had sacrificed sleep and money to buy her nice dinners on special occasions, the small gifts that he saved up for, the earnest promises that he would work hard to make a good life for them. She had dismissed those gestures as inadequate compared to what someone like Sho could do. And now, she realized painfully that Ren could have given her everything she dreamed of, if only she had been patient and loyal. Reena, hey, Sho said more gently, reaching across the table to touch her hand. I get that this is a shock, but you didn't know, right? You can't blame yourself. She snatched her hand away, a mixture of anger and panic flaring in her eyes. Shut up, Sho. He looked taken aback. What? Reena felt a surge of irrational rage at him. You knew who he was, didn't you? It was a baseless accusation, but she needed someone to blame. You or someone could have known and never told me. Sho raised his palms. How would I know? I only knew you had a boyfriend, not his life story. Reena, calm down. Calm down? Do you realize what I've done? She hissed. I left him. I humiliated him. And now, her voice choked off. She wanted to scream. Reena stood abruptly, rattling the table. The coffee in her cup spilled over, but she didn't care. This is all because of you. Her eyes flashed dangerously, a mix of regret and bitterness twisting her features. If you hadn't shown up, if you hadn't tempted me with all those fancy trips, I wouldn't have. She was practically shaking. Sho stood as well, face hardening. He was taller, but at the moment Reena's fury was intimidating. Don't put this all on me, Reena. You made your choice. It's not my fault you didn't know who he was. And what, now you're sorry because of his money? That's shallow. The word hit like a slap. Shallow? Reena's voice rose to a near shout. People in the cafe were openly staring now. How dare you? You think I'm shallow? Sho realized his mistake and lowered his tone, putting his hands on her shoulders. Reena, you're upset. Let's go outside and talk calmly, okay? She shoved him away, eyes blazing with tears of frustration. Don't touch me, you ruined everything. If it weren't for you, I'd still be with him and she couldn't even complete the thought, partly because deep down she knew the blame was not solely on Sho. Sho grit his teeth. If it weren't for me, you'd be stuck with a guy you clearly didn't appreciate until now. You think he'll take you back just because he's rich? He loved you, yeah, but after how you treated him, a sharp crack cut through the tension. Reena's palm connected with Sho's cheek in a swift slap. A few onlookers gasped. Sho staggered, more in shock than pain, a red imprint blooming on his face. You, he growled under his breath, face contorted with humiliation and anger. Reena's chest heaved. She had never slapped anyone before, but the adrenaline coursing through her was uncontrollable. "We're done," she spat with venom. She reached into her purse, grabbed the little velvet box inside, the promise ring Sho had given her on their trip, studded with tiny diamonds. She ripped the ring out and hurled it at him. It bounced off his chest and clattered onto the floor. "I don't need your cheap little tokens. Get out of my sight, Sho." Sho looked at the ring on the ground and back at her, fury and hurt in his eyes. "Fine. Good luck, Reena. You'll need it." He turned on his heel and strode out of the cafe, scooping up the ring on his way and pocketing it with a bitter laugh. As the bell on the cafe door jingled behind him, Reena realized every eye in the place was on her. Face burning with a mix of anger and embarrassment, she grabbed her phone and bag and rushed out onto the street. Outside, the evening air hit her like a wall. That hadn't gone how she imagined. Reena took a few unsteady breaths. She had acted impulsively out of shock, but now her mind whirled with one clarity. She had to get Ren back. It wasn't just about the money, she told herself hastily. She missed him, or at least, missed the way he treated her. Ren had cared for her deeply, selflessly, and in his eyes, she had been his everything. She bit her lip. Would he even look at her now? The way she'd treated him. But then again, she knew Ren's weaknesses. He had always been forgiving to a fault, and he loved her. He might be heartbroken, but he wasn't the type to turn cruel. Reena's resolve hardened. She grabbed her phone and composed a simple text to Ren. "Ren, I need to talk to you. Please. It's urgent. About something I couldn't tell you before. Can we meet? I'll come to your place tonight." She pressed send. Minutes ticked by with no answer. Impatience gnawed at her. Determined, Reena left her apartment and set out for Ren's place. The sun had set completely, the city aglow with neon signs and headlights. The train ride felt interminably long, her foot tapping anxiously. At last, she arrived at the narrow street of Ren's boarding house. It was quieter than she expected. At his door, she hesitated. Clearing her throat softly, Reena raised a hand and knocked gently. There was a muffled sound from inside, then footsteps. The door opened a crack, the chain still latched. Ren's face appeared, partly shadowed in the dim hallway light. Upon seeing her, his eyes widened in utter astonishment. Reena's heart twisted, seeing him up close again. He looked tired, thinner. "Reena?" Ren's voice was barely above a whisper. She made sure her eyes were glassy with unshed tears as she looked up at him. I'm sorry to drop by, but I had to see you." Inside, she could make out another figure moving. Was someone with him? Ren unlatched the chain and opened the door fully. He stood there. What are you doing here?" Reena cast her eyes down, a tear slipping down her cheek on cue. "Ren, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but please, can we talk? Just one last time. I have something I need to tell you. The truth." Ren looked overwhelmed. He ran a hand through his hair. "It's late. I don't know if that's a good idea, Reena." She clasped her hands in front of her, as if in prayer. "Please, just a few minutes. If you want me to leave after that, I will, and you'll never have to see me again. I promise." Ren's jaw tightened. He hesitated, then stepped aside. "All right, a few minutes." Reena let out a shaky sigh of relief and stepped into the small apartment. She was preparing to launch into her rehearsed plea when she noticed something that made her freeze. A second pair of shoes, neatly set by the entrance. Women's shoes, and not her own. She looked up, and from behind the partition that separated the kitchenette from the main area, another person emerged. A young woman with a gentle face holding a steaming teacup. The woman's gaze flicked to Ren, then to Reena. Reena's heart plummeted. Was this Ren's rebound? So soon? Jealousy flared in her chest. Ren noticed the direction of Reena's stare. This is Watanabe Mayu," he said awkwardly. "A friend of mine. She's been staying here for a bit to help me out." "Help him out? Staying here?" Reena's mind reeled. "A friend," he said. But the implication was clear enough. This woman was living with him, in his apartment, in the very space where Reena used to cuddle next to him on that futon and watch movies. The thought made her sick with jealousy. Mayu stepped forward politely and gave a slight bow, setting the teacup on the table. "Good evening. I'm Mayu," she introduced herself softly. Reena quickly forced a meek smile, hiding her inner turmoil. "I'm Reena, Ren's classmate." She avoided saying anything like ex-girlfriend. No need to announce that. Ren cleared his throat. "Mayu, maybe I should talk with Reena alone for a moment?" Mayu looked at Ren, assessing his face. There was a silent exchange. Mayu's lips pressed into a concerned line, but she nodded. "Of course, I'll step outside for a bit. I needed to call my mother anyway," she said graciously. As Mayu walked past Reena towards the door, she paused just a fraction by Reena's shoulder. In a voice so low only Reena could hear, Mayu murmured, "Please don't upset him further." Reena stiffened, stunned by the subtle fierceness underlying the woman's words. Before she could respond, Mayu exited, closing the door behind her. Now alone with Ren in the tiny apartment, the air felt heavy. Ren stood near the table, arms crossed, defensive and nervous. She took a tentative step forward, clasping her hands tightly to sell her desperation. "Ren, I heard about your father. I'm so sorry. I wanted to reach out, but I was afraid you hated me." Ren looked away, his voice flat. "You don't have to pretend you came because of that." Reena swallowed. He was right. Condolences were just her opener. She pressed on, her voice trembling in earnest now, the pressure and stakes causing genuine tears to form. "I came because Because I need to tell you the truth about what happened, about Sho, and why I acted the way I did. Ren's eyes flickered with something. Curiosity? Reena took a deep breath, letting tears slip down as she began her rehearsed confession. Ren, breaking up with you was the worst thing I've ever done, but I didn't do it because I stopped caring, or because I wanted to. My parents, they forced me. She bit her lip, voice cracking for effect. You remember I told you they never approved of us? They threatened to cut me off, to pull me out of school if I didn't choose a more suitable partner. Ren's brow furrowed, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. What? They threatened you? Reena nodded fervently. They found out about Sho's family and started pushing me towards him. They arranged that vacation as an excuse to throw us together. I was weak, Ren. I gave in to their pressure, but she let out a sob. I regretted it as soon as I saw how much I hurt you. You have to believe me. I never wanted to break your heart. I felt like I had no choice. Ren uncrossed his arms, confusion and conflict evident on his face. Reena could see him processing, his innate empathy struggling against his sense of betrayal, so she continued, reaching out timidly as if to touch his arm, though she stopped short, a tactic to show restrained yearning. I made a horrible mistake. I was stupid and scared, but none of it was because I didn't love you. I still do, Ren. His breath caught at those words. She saw it. She dared to gently take his hand. He tensed, but didn't pull away yet. I miss you, she whispered. Reena felt her tears flowing earnestly now. Some of what she said even rang true in her own ears. Buried under her greed was a genuine attachment to Ren. Ren looked down at their near-touching hands, his expression pained. Reena, I don't know, he murmured. After everything, how can I trust? He didn't finish, but she knew what he meant. She squeezed his hand now, a bold move, and he let her. His warmth was still familiar. It gave her a rush of hope. I know I broke your trust, she said, her voice hushed and dripping remorse. I will do anything to earn it back. Anything. I'll cut ties with my parents if I have to, or drop out and run away. I don't care anymore. I just want to fix what I ruined. Please, Ren. Ren opened his mouth to respond, but at that precise moment, the door clicked open. Both of them turned, startled. Mayu stood in the doorway. She had returned quietly, the look on her face as she observed the scene. Ren and Reena's hands touching, Reena in tears, was one of calm but steely assessment. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayu said, not sounding sorry at all. She closed the door behind her. Ren stepped back from Reena, as if awakening from a trance. He subtly withdrew his hand from Reena's grasp. Reena's relief twisted into annoyance at the other girl's untimely entrance. Still, she forced a polite tone. We were just talking. I was explaining some things to Ren. Mayu nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Reena's face. There was something piercing about Mayu's gaze, uncomfortably so. I see. Ren looked between them, uncertainty shadowing his face. The emotional tension in the room was thick. Reena could sense her window slipping. She needed to regain control, quickly. She turned back to Ren, reaching for his arm. Ren, what do you think? Could we? But she didn't finish the sentence. Mayu stepped forward, placing herself subtly between them, her posture protective toward Ren. Ren, may I speak with Reena for a moment? As a woman to woman, her request hung in the air. Ren blinked. Reena bristled. Anything you want to say to me, you can say in front of Ren. Mayu kept her expression composed, but there was a firmness underlying it. It's all right. Ren, could you give us just a minute? Ren looked reluctant, clearly concerned about leaving them alone. Okay, I'll just be right outside. He gave Reena an apologetic glance, then slipped out of the apartment, closing the door again. The moment he was gone, Reena squared her shoulders and glared at Mayu. The meek facade fell away, her voice low and harsh. What do you think you're doing? Mayu's polite smile vanished, replaced by a cool, unflinching stare. I was about to ask you the same, Reena-san. Reena crossed her arms. I'm fixing things with my boyfriend. None of your business. Mayu's eyes flashed. Ex-boyfriend. And it is my business if you're here to hurt him again. Reena scoffed, though her heart beat faster under Mayu's stern demeanor. I care about Ren. It's not just about the money. Mayu's polite demeanor vanished entirely, replaced by an icy calmness that sent a chill down Reena's spine. Stepping closer, her voice dropped to a cold, steely whisper. Listen carefully, Reena-san. I know far more about you than you realize. Reena scoffed nervously, trying to maintain her defiance. Is that a threat? What could you possibly know? Without hesitation, Mayu pulled out her phone, calmly unlocking it and turning the screen toward Reena. Clear images showed Reena and Sho at the luxurious hot springs resort, laughing, kissing, and enjoying lavish dinners together. Another photo revealed Reena accepting an expensive necklace from Sho, her eyes sparkling greedily. Reena's face paled immediately, her heart thundering in panic. How did you? I have connections, Reena-san, Mayu stated softly, her gaze unblinking and ruthless. Reena swallowed, her pulse racing in panic. This proves nothing. He knows about Sho already. Mayu shook her head slowly, voice quietly sharp. Oh, but does he know about your messages? The ones where you explicitly discuss how pathetic Ren is, how bored you were, how easily you could manipulate him. Mayu scrolled again, showing screenshots of private messages exchanged with Sho, revealing Reena's cruel, dismissive words about Ren. Reena's face drained of all color, her heart hammering painfully in her chest. She stepped back involuntarily, fear evident in her wide eyes. Mayu tilted her head slightly, studying Reena's terrified expression. Actually, I could show him right now. Imagine how he'd react, knowing everything you said behind his back, how little you really thought of him. Reena stumbled backward, trembling. Her bravado evaporated completely. Before Reena could respond, the door opened and Ren stepped back inside, immediately sensing the heavy tension. Mayu instantly turned to Ren, her expression effortlessly shifting back to gentle warmth. Oh, Ren, everything is fine. Reena-san and I were just talking. I was actually about to tell you something interesting about her trip with Sho, something she left out earlier. Reena's eyes widened in alarm. Actually, I should go. It's late, she blurted quickly, cutting Mayu off mid-sentence. Her voice was high, shaky. Mayu raised an eyebrow, letting a moment of silence stretch between them before nodding with a polite but knowing smile. Of course, another time then. Ren nodded slowly, looking between them with a frown. If you're sure. Yes, Reena said hastily. She couldn't leave fast enough. Thank you, Mayu-san. She turned and rushed to the door, but Mayu followed close behind. Without a word, she gently placed a hand on Reena's shoulder and guided her down the hallway. Only once they reached the quiet stairwell, out of Ren's earshot, did Mayu speak again, this time in a voice that was ice cold. You got lucky tonight, Reena, but don't mistake that for mercy. Reena froze mid-step, her breath caught in her throat. Mayu leaned close, whispering near her ear. You get one exit, take it. If you ever try to crawl back into his life again, I will burn what little credibility you have left. Reena's hands trembled. She couldn't look back. She descended the rest of the stairs in silence, feeling Mayu's piercing gaze on her back until she disappeared into the night.